So, good morning everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me, Paul and the rest of Cloud Business. It's a pleasure for me to kind of present to you today. As Paul mentioned, I'm going to kind of give you kind of a high-level overview of what Microsoft thinks and is trying to achieve with digital transformation. So, the title that I've been given and I would like to talk to you about is kind of seeing the opportunity to innovate, differentiate and thrive. You probably realize from my accent, I'm a Dutch citizen, so bear with me if you hear my accent. I'll try to keep it as English as possible. To kind of really make everybody aware, digital transformation is something that's actually happening now, right? We're not talking about something that's going to happen in the next 5 or 10 years. We are actually in the middle of it. And quite interestingly, I would say if you compare kind of the old world with the new world, there are a couple of things that actually are coming to mind. For example, if you think about hierarchies, they are pretty much static in the old world, and then we talk about kind of the new world, we talk really about kind of dynamic networks, whether it's actually in organizations or even in technologies, right? If you think about information, we have an abundance of information in the new world. If you look at the old world, there was information, but not as much as we have actually today. And actually I will show later on in the presentation some interesting facts on that. And even kind of thinking about customers. I mean, in the old world, everybody was talking about customers, and I dare say even in the new world we would talk about customers, but some organizations start talking about brand ambassadors or sometimes even fans. I know for some of us that might be a little bit kind of too far, but it's kind of showing you that it's not only just about technology, but also the impact it has on the society. So when we talk about change and actually technology that actually driving this change, I mean the pace is immense, right? It's kind of mind-boggling. I mean there are kind of a couple of things that I mentioned there on the left-hand side, just to put things in perspective. And I just want to kind of put your attention to one of them, DNA sequencing. 17 years ago, we were talking about billions of dollars that needs to be invested to actually get DNA sequencing done. Now, I mean in kind of the current world, we talk about a couple of $1,000s. So we have come a long way, right, by using technologies, but actually much more the computational power we have these days that's available to us to actually do certain things. The other interesting thing in my mind is if you look at kind of how long it takes organizations, and I'm talking in a way about really large organizations, right, to reach that 1 billion valuation or more. If you talk about the typical Fortune 500, in the past it took them roughly around 20 years. We are all familiar with, let's say, Facebook and Google, and even those guys were taking 6 years. But now if you're looking at the kind of the latest companies like Airbnb and Snapchat, 3 to 2 years to actually reach that 1 billion value. That's amazing, right? It's really kind of amazing how that digital transformation and the awareness in the market is actually allowing companies like that to reach those valuations in a very short time. So what is digital transformation? I mean, there are a little different kind of descriptions on what digital transformation is about, and I would kind of define it as using digital competencies to drive disruptive changes using technologies such like cloud, enterprise mobility, social, and even business analytics. So that's kind of in my mind what digital transformation is about. When we talk about digital transformation, it's just not only about technology, right? Because technology is one thing to actually have the digital transformation. But I think what is also really important to realize is that without kind of having the business leaders think about their business models and how they should change and actually embrace how to get people, processes and data to work together to create new value or actually better value for their customers. So it's technology as well as kind of the models that you have to change to be able to kind of really make the impact that digital transformation brings to organizations. So this kind of is a survey done by PwC, I think in 2016, and they were asking business leaders to say, you know, what trends do you see in a market that will actually transform business over the next 5 years? And things like, I don't know, climate change and so on, that will all spring to mind, right? But actually, as you can see here, 86% for the technical advances actually would be a massive impact on how the business will actually change over the next 5 years. So when you are thinking as an organization about digital transformation, you're not the only ones. It's really kind of something that almost all organizations are trying to drive and actually change in a better way for them. Now, what are kind of the driving forces behind digital transformation? I kind of put this kind of the data thing in there because I still kind of amazed about how much data is actually being, in a way, created every year, more and more. So if you look at 2006, we had 0.16 zettabyte of data. I don't know if anybody knows what a zettabyte of data is, but it's, as it says there, 1 billion terabytes. It's too much to think about, right? But it's a lot. In 2013, we had 4.4 zettabytes of data, apparently. We are predicted to have in 2020 to around 50 zettabytes of data. And by 2025, we talk about 163 zettabytes of data. I mean, in the end, it doesn't really matter anymore, but it just shows the scale of data. And what's even kind of more interesting is that if you compare the number of the amount of data we have compared to, let's say, 30 years ago, it's 20,000 times as much as we had 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And also what's interesting is that, for example, 90% of all the recorded data that's actually generated now is actually generated in the last 2 years. Because you can imagine it's all scaling up, right? So one of the fuel behind digital transformation, I would say, is data. But it's not just data, because after all, data has been generated for years, right? I mean, we all have been trying to do service with our customers, figure out what the people were thinking. We are trying to have sales statistics, etc. So we have been using data for a long time. But of course, what has changed as well is kind of the computational power we have available to do things like analytics on the data. So quite often we were gathering data, and of course, everybody knows about the mobile operators, in a way collecting a lot of data. Didn't know really what to do with it, and moreover, they didn't really have the power in the computational power to actually do something with it in a way effectively. And so what's also really important to understand is that the analytics actually have changed, and actually the progress we have done with analytics is really making an impact and actually drives also digital transformation. And then the last one is almost as important as to the previous two. So cloud, or the shift to cloud, is really kind of helping the digital transformation for businesses. Because in the past, only the larger companies could actually really invest in large data centers to be able to do, for example, the analytics on data. And therefore, you had to do a massive investment to be able to get something out of the data that we created. With moving to the cloud, now the cloud is actually, in a way, available to everybody, smaller companies, large companies, and so on, and therefore, actually having access to that computational power to do something with that data is very important. So quite often, cloud is actually really shown as being a means to kind of drive costs down, right? Because if you think about in the past, we would have a data center, we would buy some servers, some hardware in there, we would then try to put an application on there, etc., and eventually we would have an application that might actually be running and be used by your customers. These days, you can actually start an application just by getting a little subscription or subscription to either, let's say, Microsoft Azure or AWS and so on, and you can just set up a little application to check and see if it actually is going to work for you as an organization. So rather than just talk about the cost and driving the cost down, it actually also, in a way, increases the pace of change, because rather than having to invest in all that kind of hardware and the time and effort to create an application that could take years, right, to be able to get something to the market. Now we're talking about sometimes months, weeks, or even days, because you spin it up, it works, let's actually kind of make it into production straight away. And so the shift to cloud, first of all, drives innovation, because the pace that we can now actually bring solutions to the market is much faster than we had in the past. So when we talk about digital transformation, every organization is facing challenges. And the four things I'm putting on the screen here: engaging your customer, transforming your products, optimizing your operations, and empowering your employees, is nothing new, right? We have been, as organizations, trying to drive and actually find solutions for each of those and making them better. So it's really, nothing new in the sense that those are the kind of the 4 chapters, I call them chapters here, or 4 topics that we are trying to drive and actually approach with digital transformation. What has changed, though, I would argue, is that customers have now much more information available to themselves to actually compare services, products, be actually much more knowledgeable to talk to you and say, hey, this is what I want from you as an organization. This is the product or the service I'm looking for. So collaboration is very much in kind of the forefront of Microsoft to make it as easy as possible to communicate and collaborate. At the same time, we want to make sure that mobility is also really taken into account. And when we talk about mobility, it's not just simple as having a single device that allows me to kind of do everything in any kind of scenario. Obviously, you have seen things like Surface Pro coming out, Surface Pro 4, Surface Pro 5, we think about. We have now a Surface Book and so on, and we are still, of course, at Microsoft, even now going into kind of the hardware business, right? To come up with devices that look amazing and actually really nice to use. But when we talk about mobility in this sense, we're not talking about a single old dancing device. We're talking about being able to use different devices, but taking the experience with me. So when I'm on the train, I'm using a mobile, and I'm actually checking my mobile, looking at my emails, and I say, oh, actually I have to respond to this email. So I respond, start writing a response, try to attach a document, and I realize I have to kind of change something in the document. By the time my train arrives, I go and walk into the office, and then of course I want to use my laptop. Now I don't want to waste time to kind of go back to my mobile and trying to finish that. I want to kind of open my laptop, see straight away which document I was actually editing, and then attach to the email that I have start drafting. And so that's really where we talk about mobility. So the mobility of the experience going from one device to the other device and actually having that context with you. And then last but not least is really the trust, right? I mean, when we are providing as Microsoft services to the customer, and even when we are really trying to make it as interesting and as really intuitive as possible, unless the end user or the organization trusts our services, there's no way you're going to use that service, right? So we have to be making sure that we put a lot of emphasis around security and making sure that whatever we are providing can be trusted as an organization by yourselves. Reinventing productivity, I was saying, right? Looking at empowering people, employees and so on, reinventing productivity. And of course, then we talk about really kind of a modern workplace. Just an interesting statistic I picked up in one of our other decks in Microsoft. And it says here 62% in a specific county in the States, forget about where it is actually scheduled to retire over the next 3 years. So we are talking about reinventing productivity, right? About making sure that we empower our employees to be able to work from anywhere, to have information at our fingertips. And also this is happening at the same time, right? So there's a lot of what we call millennials coming into the workplace. Are there any millennials in the room? Apart from myself, obviously. So I need to be a bit careful with what I'm saying here. But apparently, millennials, for example, were grown up in an environment or in an age where internet was already in place. Although sometimes we still struggle getting wireless, even here in the hotel. Those millennials are used to actually have that at their fingertips, right? Apparently, they're not reading any newspapers anymore. They're just using apps. They kind of go onto the website, etc., and find their information that way. And of course, the way they probably were working together or communicating at school, at colleges, and so on, it's through social networking. And even in that sense, right, social networking has moved on. I mean, my son is now 18. My daughter is 16. My son was using Facebook. My daughter is just using Instagram and has never touched Facebook, right? So within 2 years, the way the millennials actually are using their technologies and their social networking is changing. So those guys are coming into the workplace, right? So we have this thing about reinventing productivity, and we have to make sure that we keep those guys in mind when we are trying to in a way, reinvent the modern workplace. So it's quite interesting. I've been working with Microsoft, or for Microsoft now, for 8 years, and before that I was at Cisco. And even at that time, which is now probably 8-9 years ago, I had this motto about, I'm starting on the right, work is what you do, no longer where you go. And that's still true today, right? And actually it's becoming more and more true. And actually the stuff we have available to us, making this kind of concept way more applicable than before. What is kind of also in my mind way different from before, like the old world and new world, is the way we actually look at productivity. When I kind of started working, and I agree, that's probably quite a few years back, it was really about kind of in a way reinventing, being productive as an individual. Yes, you were actually pushed to work with your colleagues, of course, but the tools weren't really there. You were really kind of, in a way, measured on what you as an individual were actually producing. Today, that of course is still important, but it's way more important to find and actually produce stuff with your team. Whether that team is kind of in the same building, in the same country, maybe amongst different kind of different vendors even. Sometimes we have collaboration going on between different companies to actually create a team productivity, right? So it's really about team productivity is really the new crucial thing there. And of course, to be able to kind of put all those things in place, we have to make sure we co-create, allow users to very quickly co-create work, programs and so on, and really kind of rapid integrate amongst themselves as well with their the products they work on, the projects they work on. Now, the last thing I want to finish on is kind of, I mentioned collaboration is important, moving, mobility is very important, right, when we talk about kind of empowering employee. And I mentioned also security is really key to this as well, because without security, you're not going to use Office 365, you're not going to use service from Microsoft, right? And I want to just kind of get it across to you as well, because quite often, or actually normally, Microsoft is not seen as kind of a security firm. But I just want to put this kind of into your mind and actually have a think about, because we are spending $1 billion every year on security. Without a doubt, I would almost say, we are one of the biggest security firms in the world. And we have to be, because if you want to use Xbox with your kids, if you want to use Office 365, if you want to use Outlook.com or Hotmail.com, we have to make sure that it's as secure as possible. And as a result, with all this kind of cloud service we have, and of course also kind of our Windows heritage, right? We are doing roughly around 300 billion user authentications each month. Think about the Xbox, about the cloud on Office 365, Azure, and so on. From a device perspective, we are updating 1 billion devices every month. And then again, as you can see there, we're actually analyzing emails, 200 billion emails on a monthly basis. So we have a lot of intelligence that we as Microsoft gather because we are in that business, right? That's kind of where our services are actually been running. So it's important to take away that, yes, we are providing the service, but also we are very, very keen on making sure that those services are being run full of trust and full of security. And it's not just about putting another product on your laptop or on your thing. It has to be easy for the user to be able to kind of go around to using those services, right? Because the last thing you want to do is kind of build a beautiful kind of collaboration platform, and then you tell them you have to VPN in all the time. Because then users find other ways to actually do their work. So it has to, that's what we're trying to say here, it has to be built in and engineered to be able to actually delight the end user. And I say delight is kind of course, a harsh word, but trying to make it as almost like hidden as possible for the end user, but making sure that the business owners are very aware that they should be able to trust the service that they're running. So that's kind of what I want to share with you. And then the question is to you, how will you shape the future? So with that, let me hand it over to James.
Thank you, Robert. Good morning. My name's James, so I'm the MD of Cloud Business, and welcome again, thank you for coming in. It's great to have you here. So we've got some existing customers, we've got some new people to Cloud Business, and we've got some partners and everything else. So it's great to get everyone together in the room. We're just sorting out the slides. I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about setting the scene with the new workforce. Exactly as you've just pointed out, we as an IT company, as a business, we have a problem, a challenge in helping our customers engage with the new workforce. And I don't mean just the young people, it's everyone. There's a big shift going on, and as an IT company we're being asked more and more to get involved in things that aren't IT, like training, like why is digital transformation in the workplace important? Why are we even talking about it? And it does come down to a shift in the way that the workforce are expecting technology to enable them to work. Does anyone know, we keep talking about it, what year you'd have to be engaged, year you'd have to be born in to be a millennial? I told you earlier.
1982. What year were you born, James?
That's 1981. 2000. It does change. Some people say 1984, 1960, etc. That's crudely the age bracket we're talking about. Now what's interesting is that's 50% of the workforce in 3 years' time. In 3 months' time, we're in 2018, we need to start thinking about this, it needs to be ready, and this is already starting to be the way that the shift is going. And there's some really interesting stats about this, this group of people. So let's talk about their psychology. By the way, there's a really scientific way for telling if someone's a millennial or not. You turn them upside down, and if coins drop out, they're not millennial. So 74% of them want to work flexibly. So 9 to 5:30 is not attractive to them anymore. By the way, money, when they're looking at job opportunities, is actually about third or fourth on their criteria of looking for where and how they want to work. 88% want a collaborative work culture. Okay. What's interesting to me is actually the word after the percentage. Want, prefer, these are the words that they're using. Believe, 69% believe office attendance, regular office attendance is unnecessary. Okay.
Are they UK or global?
This is global. The source will be in the slides as well, so there's a long report on it. So this picture, okay, is really starting to build. This is where, you know, if you invite someone in for an interview, it's all about talent, attraction and retention. You invite them into a workplace where you're saying, here's our kind of grey office, you sit there and you work 9 to 5:30, you're going to struggle. In fact, they might not even come back to settle into you. After all of that, 84% want to make a positive impact, whilst only working 70% of the time from somewhere else, and it makes me smile. So, this is about purpose. They are looking for, and by the way, they're only going to be in a job in an organisation typically 2 to 3 years. So within that time, they want to make an impact. So this is really interesting now. So this isn't about wanting to sit and learn something and be trained over a long period of time. They want quick impact, they're impatient, and they're used to having everything at their fingertips. Okay? So now I always say, well, that's fine, we're not going to recruit those kind of people, we're going to have to embrace it. I have an office full of millennials, in fact, someone on their phone at the moment. Naughty. But, you know, that's normal, okay? They're all on their headsets, most of them all day. So this is a change in the office psychology. They're either listening to music, or they're on Skype calls with people, or that's the way they concentrate. You know, and we have to embrace that, okay? It doesn't mean we're not productive. Now, Generation X, so 1960 to 1971. These guys are still very much in the workplace, you know? And in fact, trying to get these guys to come to a seminar is nigh on impossible. That's why we're having to video it, so that we can later, you know, cast it out to them or make it available online. So we've got Generation X, who are still social in the physical sense, they like to come and meet people, etc. as well. And they are still the leaders, managers and decision makers at the moment. So what we see in the way that we have to talk, sell, and the technology that we're presenting very much has to blend between the two, and we have to make sure we have the right adoption methods for both types. And this means that when we deploy, as we'll see a bit later, some of the funky tools that we've got, you know, even just new email or new ways of working on the phone, we have to communicate very differently. So we have to offer classroom training for some people. And you very much were saying the seniors or partners, you know, they want to come and actually, or have someone come to their desk and talk them through it. We can't get the millennials to turn up to that stuff, and that's fine. So we have to do video training. We have to make things go online. They want instant messaging rather than phone up support. And that's a problem, because if they have a problem with their technology, they don't pick up, they're 3 times more likely to ask someone on Facebook, and I don't joke, that is in IT that they went to university with, not even in the company, how can I help fix this, than they are to pick up the phone and log a support call. And if you think about that support call experience, it's really quite crude. It has been the same for a long time, that they're picking up the phone, and then they have to explain something which is frustrating, then they have to wait for someone to call them, and they probably call them back and they hate picking up the phone. In fact, most of our millennials don't even have phones on their desk. They just want someone to instant message or chat them back and carry it. But we still have 2 diverse sets of people in the workplace, and that's normal. We have to work out how we navigate it. The people, and I very much speak as an IT company here, but you know, it's the same for you and your customers. The people that are contacting us are different now. So it's not IT phoning us up saying we'd like a new system, blah, blah. Sometimes it is IT phoning up, but the sales are shouting at us. HR, marketing want to share their files with an external partner or organisation. We can't do that, please help us. The conversation has changed. It's very much been driven by people who've got, the worst thing, we see this a lot, is that those people, IT, aren't keeping up, and then they start going to use things like their personal Dropbox accounts, or they start putting things on USB sticks, God forbid, etc., etc. This is called shadow IT, if you've heard that term in the background. It's where people are using their own personal or different applications. It causes a nightmare for security and facilities. We created, and we can create, beautiful spaces online for people to work. So this is replicating. It's not good enough anymore, in my mind, to just give them a blank Microsoft site and say go off and work. It's got to be engaging, because then it's got to feel like they're part of the company. It's got to feel like a part of a branded experience. And that word experience is what they're looking for. It's really important that you create the whole experience for those people who feel engaged and parts of the business. This is our own, and David's quickly going to do a demonstration on this later. When I log into my own intranet first thing in the morning, it shows me a nice picture of my face. Again, millennials like photos and engaging, and they're much more likely to pose for their work photo. I have several photos taken to get the right one. And then we've got all the information related to me, not just generic company information, is then pushed towards me. I can find people in my organisation nice and quickly, and their contact details. I've got stats coming about the business. And on the right-hand side there, we've got some internal social stuff happening there. So we've got a project around Europe at the moment, and someone's posted a picture of them on the beach somewhere in Europe. So I'm getting all of that when I first log in the morning. So I'm starting, I'm much more engaged with the business, and my experience is much higher. And on top of that, people can create things very quickly. So if you need a quick form for tracking something you're doing internally, if you want to ask everyone in the business a questionnaire, you can create that. You can actually very hands within a few clicks do that, and there's an online video to teach yourself how to do it, so you don't need to come to IT. Always on and always social. So, there's a snapshot of my screen last night. David Bishop, very diligently working late at night. But I can see he's online. I've got a green tick next to his picture. I can engage with him straight away. Use Skype, you can see the presence of all the people in the organisation that are relevant to me, and I can sort that. And we can have an instant video call and those topics. Okay? We don't use the phone anymore. Hands up who can have a video call with someone outside their organisation within a few clicks. No. Hands up who can share securely documents or group of documents with someone outside the organisation within a few clicks. Okay, we can help you guys. If you want it. And then always on and always social. So I'm promising myself not to talk about any product names in this whole pitch. This is a little bolt-on product we use to our main IT, and it allows people to have very quick conversations, post pictures, etc. It's used as a real mixed bag. We've just kind of left it open. So some people, there's a whole technical track on there that they're talking about the latest thing they've heard online and discussing that. For some, it's a birthday announcement, so Loz posted about Dave's birthday on there.
There's a typo on there though, James, it's his 30th, isn't it?
Yes, so really interesting. And we are currently about 35 people working all over Europe at the moment. Now some of the guys over working out in some of the countries we're working are able to wish Dave a happy birthday. Didn't know it was his birthday before, they didn't know we'd done this in the office, but we were engaged with them. They feel part of our company, they feel part of something that's having a purpose, having an impact, and they're more likely to stay and do good work, which is what we want. Search. They want to be able to find things super quick. We all do. Right? So we're used to this in our private lives, personal lives. Interestingly, I googled person on a phone. And if you notice the shift from a phone being that to that, you see the photos are changing over time. It's something quite interesting to note. That's what Google is going back. We can do that. There is no reason why all the data in your company or organisation shouldn't be at your fingertips. That's something really straightforward and one of our quick wins that we can help you with if you like. It doesn't have to all be in the cloud. We can help you search and all the relevant information come back in a search. You can filter it, you can do tags, you can search, you can set up an alert. So in large organisations, a lot of people like to set an alert on their name. So if anyone creates a document or new post with their name in it, then they get an alert about it each day. So these kind of things we can do to help you tips and tricks. And then security. A couple of things here. A lot of people think security is about kind of quite dull, restrictive stuff that stops the way you work, and it absolutely isn't. We can do it in a way that's really slick, so that your laptop or your phone is secure. It knows where it is. So if you're in the office, it allows you to open up and actually get access to more things. If you're out of the office, the behaviour changes. It restricts sometimes what you can find, and so on. Because everyone wants to use their own phone. And we can do that. So we can do that in a way that we create a little bubble on their phone, a secure bubble, and they can work in that bubble, and if the phone gets lost, stolen, or that person leaves the organisation, we can just delete that bubble remotely. It doesn't affect their photos, doesn't affect their instant messaging, anything like that. And we can stop them copying, if you want to, and pasting information out of your work email to other apps on their phone. They just won't be able to do that or print. All those things we can do quite naturally without having to have restricted devices. And who wants to carry two phones anymore? It's just, it's a nightmare. Sending an email, again, very simple thing we can help you with. You can get a permission tab drop down. There's only a few there. You can do things, when you send an email to someone, you can say, do not forward, or this email is not allowed to be printed, or this email can only be sent to a certain group of people, and after 30 days it's going to disappear. So you can do these things and protect the information in your organisation. The newest stuff will actually, and this is getting a little bit technical, if it displays a really sensitive email on the screen, it will change the refresh rate on the screen, which is the way it flickers, so you can't take a picture of it either, which has always been the other way that people got around that. Just one note before I kind of close, it doesn't have to be a major investment. Nearly everything I've just shown you there is actually relatively small cost per employee per month, with some setup costs, and it can be done really quickly. And if any of that's caught your imagination or attention, that kind of stuff can be deployed and set up for you relatively easily. We've done this before. We operate over 23 countries so far. We've moved 250,000, actually nearly 1/3 users to the cloud, and over 3 million files, which is a scary stat, but it's been going up. There's guys in the room who you're welcome to have a further conversation with as well, but I just wanted to tell the story of what we've found about working with millennials, and how that's changed the way that we engage with them through training, the way we plan, the way we communicate, the way we end up thinking about how they work. That's it. Any questions?
Hi everyone, I'm afraid I'm a millennial, so I will try and make this as Generation X as possible if that's what's needed. We're actually a US company originally, but we've been in Europe about 5 years now. We have got data centres throughout Europe to help with people's business, so you can store your documents locally. Of the 14 years of our company, we're across 188 countries, which we've got 43 different languages. So if you do business with other countries, you need different languages, communication, collaboration, we can support with all of that. And we've got 200 million users with 300,000 customers. So I think it's something like 136,000 new unique users using DocuSign every day. So somebody that didn't use us yesterday has used signing us today. You don't need a DocuSign account to sign anything, so I can send anything to anybody in the room. You can sign it, carry on with your day, it's completely legally binding. So DocuSign as a platform, we have a range of things that can help you move forward with your business. So you can prepare any of your documents. I'm going to show you some of the DocuSign Microsoft integrations, but it's important to know that you can actually start your document from anywhere. So whether that be in Word, your desktop, Salesforce, NetSuite, any of the CRM or ERP systems, you can take your document from anywhere that you want, as long as we have an integration, which I think we've got about 1,500 now to help with your business. And then you can take all those documents, prepare it, and send it via DocuSign. So when it goes to this middle section, so the authentication, you're probably like, oh, is this secure, is this legal? Don't worry, I will cover that shortly. But we will execute it using an e-signature like you saw in the video, but it might be that you need another level of authentication. So we could require a text message, a voice authentication, single sign-on. It's kind of an extra layer that we can put to secure anybody's documents. We also have the manage section of it, so reporting. As you saw earlier, you can look into your dashboard. This gives you kind of that next level down. So whether you're in a sales organisation and you might want to see you've sent out 100 documents but only 63 have been viewed, 41 have been signed, how does that look? Where is it in the stage of this completion of this document? It kind of gives you that next level of viewpoint that you wouldn't have with a paper document or a paper trail or different things in the kind of stage as you go through your business. So as I said, DocuSign's on its own platform. So we have the equivalent of bank-grade security, and we've got data centres in Paris, Amsterdam and Frankfurt, which allows 99.999% uptime, so you'll always be able to access your documents as you move forward. We have different standard-based signatures dependent on where you're working within Europe, so obviously Germany, France, Sweden, they all have kind of different regulations, all of which DocuSign completely supports, and legally that we can support and help with that with your business. And we also have kind of a single sign-on, so if you already have that within your business, you can be that on your landing page as well. So I'm just going to give you a few stats. So this is from our internal return of investment calculator. It's some details that we've collected over the years. Saving time. So we have a 25% faster turnaround on agreements. So if you think at the moment how you are sending documents, whether that be on an email, you're waiting for the other person to open it, download it, print it, sign it, scan it back, send it to you, you then have to print it, have to chase someone around the office to countersign it, scan it back in, send it to your team, overnight it, post it, chase that person, missed a signature, forgot to initial page 4, that kind of entire process, which is very manual at the moment, very paper-driven, very expensive. DocuSign can just be sent, signed, returned back to you all in the same day. So 86% of our documents are returned the same day, of which 65% on average are signed within an hour. So that's really, really impactful, whether that's in a sales organisation. We work with a doctor's surgery in the Midlands at the moment, which will send it straight to your pharmacy, whether it's checking somebody out of a hospital, which we're working in Manchester, whether it's an education system where you're trying to onboard 4,000 students to a university. As you start looking into different industries where there's a paper trail, DocuSign can really help that and be really impactful. Happy customers, or delight customers is the term at the moment. So we have increased customer satisfaction. So we look at this from 2 ways as DocuSign. A customer dependent on where you sit in the business means 2 different things. So if you're customer facing like myself, you guys are my audience, you guys are my customers, I want you to be happy. If you're in HR, for example, your customer is your internal employees. So whether that's onboarding them, whether that's sending out an offer letter, whether that's holiday forms, whether that's sick forms, anything within the HR kind of vertical of your business, your employees are your internal customers. So DocuSign can help with all of those processes to make sure that they're just as happy and they're not being left behind, and you're only looking at external innovation. Increased productivity. So as I kind of gave the very first initial example, the whole time and turnaround is obviously going to increase your productivity. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm rubbish with a printer, so I'll kind of stand, look at it, press a few buttons. I'll get the person sat next to the printer to come and stand next to me, and we'll both press a few buttons. Then we'll get IT over and they'll fix it. But I've wasted like 3 people's time for 15 minutes trying to figure out how to print something, and then wasting paper because I've printed it wrong 3 times. So that is just one example how just digitising this entire process can really increase the productivity within your workforce. Also, when you look at the productivity of the rest of your team and how not chasing people down, making sure people are chased. If you have, my manager's on holiday at the moment, for example, I just text him, he could sign it there and then for me. We don't have to wait 2 weeks for him to return from holiday, maybe miss something at the end of quarter. Cutting operating costs. I think that's kind of an amalgamation of the previous few points. When you look into printing, paper, ink, time, posting, packaging, not getting a deal in last minute of the last day, maybe making sure you don't miss that important employee that you want to hire, but somebody sent it digitally, so they signed the offer letter before it got to them through the post. When you put all of those things together, it's proven that DocuSign can save you on average £27 a document. When you start putting that over thousands and thousands of pieces of paper that are obviously going through your business day in, day out, that obviously turns into quite a substantial amount of money that we can look to support with. And then go green. So there's a lot of companies at the moment that have like a green initiative trying to go green. So far we've saved just over 10 billion pieces of paper. We've got a nice infographic that describes we've saved like 76 manned missions to Mars in diesel. And then we filled up like 3,000 swimming pools of certain things to just show kind of the impact that we're having by trying to make people go green, less paper, less waste, and the impact that that can have on your business. So as James nicely pointed out for millennials, everybody's on the go, everybody's on their phones, everyone's on their tablets. DocuSign is completely agnostic and works across all devices, laptops, phones, tablets, anything that you need, DocuSign works seamlessly with. So it's flexible, it's quick to deploy, we've got an app, we've got the desktop version, everything you need just to keep you and your business moving forward. We've also got pre-built integrations like I discussed, so we've got just over 15, nearly 1,600 integrations available now for DocuSign. So anything that you've either got in your system or something that you might be using that you're not sure, we have an open API and we can support an integration into that. And ensure that whether you're in Salesforce or Dynamics or anything like that, you can be directly within your interface and send DocuSign from within that. You never have to leave it, drag and drop, log into DocuSign, send, kind of that whole thing that stops you from doing businesses seamlessly. My boss has a point, DocuSign should not be seen. Our integrations are so good you shouldn't even know that it's there. And we enable you to send it directly within whichever interface you want to be within. So, as I said, we do have a really long-standing relationship with Microsoft. We've pretty much since the company started 14 years ago, we went into some type of partnership with Microsoft. They're actually our biggest customer globally, which is good for us. We're also a user of Microsoft internally at our side. We also have 3 people sat in the Microsoft Seattle offices that work on all the integrations into O365, SharePoint, Dynamics, and then on the surface. This means whenever your company, whether it's on O365, gets the update, DocuSign will update exactly the same day, exactly the same time. There's never going to be a lag in your business. Once they do a patch, we'll do the one that kind of meets your needs to make sure that you can continue to move your business forward at the same time. That's exactly the same as some of the other integrations that we have, depending on where your business sits. But as I said, once again, it seamlessly works. I can be within SharePoint, send a document out from SharePoint, it will go, it will get signed, it will come and save back into SharePoint, and the certificate of completion, which validates the document, will also save next to that. So once again, you're not saving into different places, it's not in your email, it's not in your desktop. Someone hasn't gone on holiday for 2 weeks, so you don't know where that agreement is. It can all be stored wherever you want to effectively move your business forward. Okay, legality and security, my favourite topics. I think alongside the cloud, this is another thing people might be a little bit wary of. Is it legal? Is it secure? So I think you're going to get these slides after. Yes, thanks, James. So these are just both hyperlinks, Legality Guide and Trust Centre. This is just on our website. It's www.docusign.com/legality. So on the top right-hand corner, it will say select a country. That has every single country that DocuSign is legal in. If you're worried that you're based in the UK and you do business with Switzerland, or vice versa, or Bahrain, or Mexico, as long as it's on that list, we're completely legal. It will take you to a page where it will say if it's court admissible, general business use in the e-signature model, and then it will also have all of the information that was signed off in the Court of Law or the House of Commons to say that this is completely legal and the year that it was passed. So the UK was 2002, for example, and it's got all of the documentation below that. The same with our Trust Centre. As we're built on our own platform, people are obviously a little bit worried about the security of that. Same again, all of our information of our trust centre there, all of our certifications, all of our audits, everything you need to know to make sure that all your documentation is safe is also there. Bear in mind, the trust centre, if you don't store your documents within DocuSign, it's pretty much irrelevant because it will route back to wherever you want it. So if it's on your SharePoint instance, it saves there, that's where your document's going to be stored. So it won't actually be stored on DocuSign, it will just enable the transaction. Okay, so where can DocuSign impact you? We tend to look at it maybe as a vertical specific, line of business specific, so depending on who we're talking to. Like James said earlier, it's not always IT anymore that we're potentially talking to. It might be a HR department. So I just kind of be broad, have an open mind. Maybe when you go back to the office this afternoon, think, oh, this is laborious, this is long, this is taking so much time. If only we could just digitise that. It doesn't always have to be a signature that's required, it could just be a workflow. It might just be a notification of price change, it might just be a notification of an update from your company, it might just be, oh, we're hosting an event. You are able to see that they've actually received that email, how many times they viewed it, if they even open the document. So it gives you that kind of next level of granularity, so you can go back and say, I know you did open this, is there a problem with it? Is there something that you're not happy with? And it just connects you to that customers that little bit more that you might not get with an email or kind of a paper trail that you would have thought of before.
Good morning, my name's David Bishop. I'm a technical consultant at Cloud Business. I've been working with them for 5.5 years now. So hopefully today I'll be able to give you a bit of insight into exactly what I do in my day job, some of the pieces of Office 365 that I work with, and then perhaps afterwards we can go into a bit more detail if there's anything I do cover that you'd like to know a bit more about, in a bit of detail. So I'm really customer facing. I'm always talking to customers, always working through problems with them, and finding out what it is that they want to get from Office 365. Now this slide here really shows the kind of breadth that Office 365 provides. There's a host of applications and services that Office 365 allows users to log into, to provide to their employees. The problem with this is that there's some of these that cross over, so it's actually confusing for end users as to what they should use and when they should use it. And Microsoft to keep releasing things, which is great. It's nice to see that innovation, but sometimes we'd like to see a little bit more sort of clarity as to exactly what it is we should be doing with these. So a big part of my job is to help customers understand and pick and choose the right applications for them. One of the things that we often do is it's this question, when to use what? And one of the pieces that we work through is you don't have to use all of those apps that we saw on the previous slide. You can quite easily pick and choose a few of the applications that are key to your business, and we can define exactly what they should be used for. So this is just a summary, really, of one of the slides, and Max, you would have seen this one before. How are we going to explain this to our end users? How are we going to make sure that they don't get confused as to what they should use? Well, we can do that quite easily with some of these opportunities. And within here we say, right, how do I access the applications through a browser, through a sync client on a mobile device? What should it be used for? What else is it connected to? Where are the documents stored that are put into these applications? Because once you actually get used to Office 365, you integrate and your users use the different areas of 365. But it's really key that they understand exactly where the location is stored. There's a lot of crossover, there's a lot of integration between them, and on the front of it, it can be confusing. So a big part of my job is helping people to understand and going through the training aspect with IT to begin with, but then we have to move that on down into the power users, we call them. So people are going to be business users, but they're then going to train other employees within the business. The other part of this is Delve, which is a search application, search and discovery tool in Office 365 that spreads across all of the Office 365 applications. And I'm a real advocate of this, and I'll show you a couple of slides in a moment, and we'll look at exactly what it can do. So some of the recent projects that I've been working on, a Skype for Business deployment, so integrating and implementing instant message, voice and video calling, desktop sharing. One of the benefits of the customer I recently worked with was that they had users all over the country, and they were doing lots of stand-ups, lots of senior management meetings that they'd like to share with everybody. So they use large screen televisions with videos, and the senior management team could create a Skype for Business meeting. They could go on video, a voice, and they could bring in people from across the country so that they didn't have to travel back to the office. And that really helped. It just made people feel a part of the business again, which they would have missed out on these management meetings. They wouldn't have felt that they got the information other than a summary email later on. So that was really beneficial to them. Microsoft Teams, OneDrive and SharePoint governance. We obviously deploy Microsoft Teams and OneDrive for document storage, but the governance part of it is really, really important. So we've got a Cloud Business set of templates which really help to ask the questions to IT, to information security, and we can get that information back from them, and then we can define the configuration that we put into Office 365. So we've done a lot of work with this recently, and it's really helped me and the team understand SharePoint and OneDrive in even more depth, because we know it technically and the configurations that we can do, but then we get a lot of feedback from the customers as to exactly how they want to secure and make sure that the users have access to what they need to, when they need it, but it just makes sure that we've got it all tied down and it's all documented as well. Now I'm just going to show you the Boost Intranet product that we've got. So let me move that here and hopefully you'll be able to see the browser. So this is Boost Intranet. This is developed by a team in Cloud Business, and we've put it into SharePoint Online. You can also go to SharePoint on premises if needed, but the cloud is certainly where we're focusing a lot of our efforts. Now, Office 365, as you saw at the very beginning, lots of different applications. So to tie those in, you can certainly create a basic intranet in SharePoint, but we've looked at putting a really nice skin on top of it. We've looked at putting some extra apps in there as well. And this is really where you can start your day. You can see we've got, James showed this earlier, we can see who we're logged in as. We've got some key applications, key links up at the top. We've got the news, which is in the centre here. And if we scroll down, we can see there's some further news, some templates. The people directory within Boost. So this feeds from Office 365 user accounts. It picks up their pictures. We can click links which will open an email to those users. We can also go to create a Skype conversation directly from within here. And we can also go back to their profile accounts as well. And that's another tool that we use. It's called Hyperfish. It's a second to load up. It's a tool which really helps to populate profile information within Office 365. And as we see, profile information is all over the place in 365 within the Delve application. But when we're looking at other apps like Microsoft Teams, we've got organisation charts, we've got Skype for Business, we've got Outlook. Information about users is shown in lots of different places, but to make sure that it's there can be quite a bit of effort. So Hyperfish have developed a tool which helps to fix a lot of these problems here. No contact info in Outlook cards, no organisation charts, blank Delve profiles, can't send to a manager for approval. So within SharePoint you can upload a document, you can tag it with a manager, or you can tag it with the user, and then it will look up their manager and send it for approval. Click to dial cell phone Skype calls, and just inconsistent profile information are some of the things that Hyperfish is trying to solve. So how does it work? Well, it monitors Active Directory, so it looks at what's missing, what's invalid, and you can specify the different attributes that it does with this. Users are then notified either by email or a chatbot. And this is really cool. It works really nicely. It will send an email to a user and it will say, hey Dave, you're missing some information from your profile. Can you tell me your mobile number? And I can reply and say, I can either just reply with my number, or reply, hey, yeah, here's my mobile number. And I can also reply with things like, here's my latest email address, here's my new contact number. And it will go and update that information within Office 365, within on-premises Active Directory, and it can also link into other applications such as HR applications and so on. So they've worked really hard with this, and also it works with Skype for Business. So it's quite an informal way of doing it. And I think on this next slide, here we go. The hyperbot, as they call it, it's got full dialogue with the user. And the left-hand side here, you can see, hi Wally, can you send me your phone number? They've replied, and then it just says thanks. So we configure the Hyperfish application, We can configure it when it should send instant messages, who it should send them to. It also has an approval process in there as well before anybody confirms information if needed. But it's a really nice way to do it, either via email or via the Skype messaging service. So the three pieces there, Hyperfish, it understands what's missing from profile information. It's easy for the end users, and the real-time compliance can all be configured, and that's where we would come in, help the IT teams define that, put it in place once, train them up a bit further so they can configure it and change it as they use it. But it just gives an opportunity to take away perhaps what could be a very manual process and use a tool to solve the collection of profile information. And there's lots of different projects that can rely on profile information. You can have Office 365 already, and we can implement Hyperfish later on for you. But we also talk about it during any of the new projects that we're working on. So start from business rollouts, personalised portals, so other intranet projects, corporate directories. A lot of the time people say we're using 365, we've got our users in there, but we really would like a nice looking profile company directory, workflow approvals, cloud migrations, company mergers. That's a really good one to use at home because there's a lot of disparate information. So Hyperfish can become really useful for this. Now, Hyperfish offers at the moment, they've got a free tool, or a light tool they're calling it at the moment, which you can use to analyse your Active Directory from what's missing. It will tell you which profile information is missing. And it will also give you the opportunity to update Office 365 with pictures, which is a really nice piece because it looks a lot better when you've got an image of someone, you can find out what they look like. We worked with a university who really wanted the pictures in there. It was quite a lot of effort to do this. So Hyperfish has been around probably around 4 or 5 months, I think at the moment. Been in development for a lot longer. But that would have really helped us if we had this tool at that point in time, being able to quickly and easily deploy it and get it to automatically send out and collect pictures. Okay. It also uses machine learning so that it will only allow you to upload pictures of a profile. So no shots of you snowboarding, that kind of thing. It will just be face, as long as it's got facial recognition in there. So I hope that's given you a bit of an idea of some of the things that I've been working on, some of the tools that we're using to try and solve some of the problems. Happy to take any questions or have conversations after this.